Goeiemôre, al die pragtige mense daar buite. Vir die van julle wat nie weet wie ek is nie, ek is Petrolien, ek is die owner van die Seephuis in Suid-Afrika. En vandag se video wil ek bietjie chat oor die praat oor hoe om jou seepbesigheid te begin, of waaraan moet jy dink as jy besluit, goed, ek wil nou 'n seepbesigheid begin. Ons sal hom in Engels doen dat die mense daar buite in Suid-Afrika ook kan verstaan waarvan ons praat, maar ja, ek hoor baie mense daar buite maak jy opmerking. Jy weet, daai conversations wat jy het langs die kampvuur sê, ja man, begin 'n seepbesigheid, almal moet was, jy gaan 'n killing maak. En dis nie heeltemal hoe 'n seepbesigheid werk nie, of 'n cosmetic of 'n bath and body business werk nie. Alright, so ek het notes sodat ek kan bly by die punt en net seker maak ek deel alles wat ek vir julle wil sê. So yeah, for our English viewers outside of South Africa, I'm Petrolien. I am the business owner of the Seephuis. In English, it means the soap house. I started my soap business 3 years ago. One of the biggest difference between me and maybe most soap makers out there is I started the business with the intention of it being a business. I was not a hobby soaper and then had a passion or something to turn it into a business. And I'll throughout the videos, I'll explain a little bit more about that. But that's really how my business started. There was some inspiration behind starting the adventure and starting everything. Yeah, I'll speak later about that. But there was inspiration behind actually starting it. Completely fell in love with it, and granted, I do have like medical science background, which made it a lot easier. But yeah, loved it ever since. And from about it's actually more than 3 years now, almost 3 years, that I have sort of, I want to say, dabbling in soap making. It's been a part-time hobby. I've been at some markets, I've been at some rather big markets. And as I am looking now to really expand my business next year into a full-blown, full-fledged business, I have decided that I want to share everything that I'm going to do along the journey to help you guys out there who also are thinking of making a business out of your soap making. Okay. Which brings me to my first point is passion versus a business mindset. Most soapers out there stumble along across soap making because they had to do a science project for their children, or somebody else made soap, or they saw a recipe in a book, or during COVID there were a lot of ideas floating around or on what people could keep themselves busy with, and that's sort of how people, most of them, not all of them, but most of them start out with soap making. There's a big difference between making soap for that purpose versus making soap for a business. And if you make soap for, because it's a hobby, you like making soap, you are passionate about creating things. Remember, in my other life, I'm also a performance coach, a mental performance coach. I work with the neuroscience side of things. It's not the actual soap making that you are passionate about. You are passionate about creating things. So people often get lost in this whole thing about, I'm passionate about soap making, it's going to be my business, but it's really about the creation. And you can turn that creativeness of yourself into a very successful business. Anyway, to come back to my point, passion versus business mindset. The biggest mistake or downfalls from people that shift from a hobby, being a hobby soap maker, to venturing into a full-blown business is their mindset. Whenever you transition from just doing it part-time, very much part-time, maybe you are at some small farmers markets, you pack out your soap, and you sort of, that's what you've been doing for many years, or even not so long, doesn't really matter for how long you've been making soap. And then they want to move into the business side of things, and then they realize, oh, but I'm not successful, or I am not making enough money to sustain the business. And for the most part, the mindset must be right. Your mindset must be right. I went into this business with the mindset of, I am going to build a business. I want to earn, or let me rephrase that. I want to earn money out of whatever it is that I'm doing. I've done it for 3 years now, like I said, testing things out, and now I am ready to expand and scale my business and moving into a full-fledged business. But that is important, because the way you're going to plan things, the way you're going to run your operational aspect, your day-to-day operations, how much time you're going to spend on the soap making is going to differ between whether it's just an hobby and you're passionate about it, and whether you are approaching it as a business. One of the biggest things I also do see is the whole concept about poverty mindset. And that is what makes the transition for many people so difficult, is when people start to sell, especially here in South Africa, people start to go to farmers markets because they need the money, and they want the money, and they like what they're doing. They're passionate about making soap. But the moment they move into a business, it's almost like they get this mindset of everything must be so secretive. Nobody must know what I'm doing. Otherwise, somebody's going to steal my idea, and people steal ideas all the time. That they don't go into it with a business mindset. They don't go into it doing proper market research and all of that. And I'm going to speak about those steps that you really want to nail down before you venture into the idea of making your business, or your soap making hobby, into a business. Because your business mindset is going to determine how you plan, how you organize, and your dedication towards it. Because now you're going to start to set business goals. You have to put your operational processes, every single thing that you do every single day must be geared towards meeting that goal that you have put down in the beginning of the year or the financial year. So yeah, like I said in the beginning, many times people sit around the campfire, they hear you make soap, and they say, oh, you're going to get rich because everybody must wash. And that's not now a bath and body product or a business work. Just because everybody needs a bar of soap doesn't mean you're going to get rich. All right. Then number 2 is the legal consideration. So I'm not a business coach. I'm not a lawyer, so I cannot give you any legal advice on the business side of things. But most people, especially here in South Africa, start off as a sole proprietor, which means you are you. You're making the soap, me as Petroline. It's my company. I haven't registered the company, and I haven't trademarked the name or all of that. One of the biggest things you need to consider, because when you think about a business name, people are so scared that people's going to steal something or whatever the case might be, that they forget that if they do register their business, like let's say you into a limited proprietorship, then you have to have taxes done by a third. It has to be really by a third party, because there's so many things involved. All of the stuff that's involved, you will not be able to cope with that if you've never ever ran a business. Just trust me. Unless you have enough money to hire an accountant to do all of that work, and they are expensive, to do all of that work for you from the get-go, then there's no way that you will have enough money to take care of those things. So just start off as a sole proprietor. You register a URL, then you have a URL for the time when you want to start a website, get all of your social media with that same name at the same time, and you can worry about the content and the stuff that you want to post later. But yeah, that's just one tip. The second thing also, in terms of one of the important things for a bath and body or a soap maker, let me rather just use the word soap maker, is the significance of understanding the labeling requirements and the packaging requirements, especially in South Africa. The regulatory classification of a cosmetic and of a soap differ between countries. So just because the UK might classify a bar of soap as a cosmetic doesn't mean that South Africa is doing the same. And in fact, it's not the case in South Africa. It's regulated separately from cosmetics in South Africa. However, the classification can differ depending on the ingredients that you use in your soap or the intent of the use. In other words, if you make a soap specifically to heal acne, then that will fall under a cosmetic use. Then your soap must be regulated by SAPRA, and you have to have all of your tests and everything in order to prove that if you make this medical claim, this is what your soap is doing, which no small business can afford. So you're not even going to go that route. So, and remember now, I'm talking about South Africa. Other countries are completely different. In other countries, like in the UK, you have to register your recipes and everything that you do. We have a lot more freedom here in South Africa. So really all that, you cannot make any claims about your soap. You cannot say this is a soap that will brighten your skin. You cannot say this is a soap that will heal acne. This is a soap that will heal inflammation in your skin. You cannot make any medical claims on your label or your packaging. Your soap, wash. That's all that your soap is doing, unfortunately. I do know and I recognize that there are a lot of soapists out there, especially locally, that completely break those rules. And let them do that. It's fine. Just know from personal experience, there are people walking around in markets checking people's labels. They are there. So I have no intention of marketing a soap as a cosmetic and make a medical claim about my soap. But it's not the market that I serve. It's not the niche that I serve. But yeah, just know if you are going to make medical claims and you have plans to expand the business, that will involve a lot of cost and expenses to actually get that tested thoroughly. Number 3, market research. Like I said, many soapists start off by making soap as a hobby. And this is one thing that probably took me a year and a half to realize, is that I am not making soap for myself. I can have the best ideas, I can have the best designs and think this is a cute design, this is great, let me try that. But if I do not have people that will buy that, my business is dead. I am not making soap for myself. I am making soap for my clients. So I need to listen to what it is that my clients want. One of the best ways to do market research, especially in South Africa, it's readily available, is being at farmers markets. Standing there at the farmers market and listening to what the people is telling you when they get to your stall, or what they are talking about amongst one another when they are looking at your products. For me, for example, the biggest thing that I realized, the biggest thing I've heard that sort of made me realize that is that people will get to the soap and they will say, oh, it's so pretty. I would never want to use it. Okay, so here's the problem with that for me as a business owner. It's great that they buy the soap there and then. If they put it somewhere and they're never going to use it, I don't have a repeat buyer, because they don't know how my soap feels, how my soap wash. They have no idea, because the soap just stands there as I don't know, as a white elephant. So for me, it became important to get my soap in people's hands so that they can use it. And my entire business strategy is around that. Granted, there are markets where you do want to make pretty soaps, and that's a difference between artisan and soaps for everyday use. There are more places where you make artisan soaps, like I make wedding favors, I make gift favors, And that's where the artisan soaps come in, where you have a chance to pretty up soaps. And but that's a different market. That's a completely different market than the people that use your soap every single day. For example, another example is I don't make vegan soaps. I don't serve the vegan. I don't market to the vegan market because they are such a small market. And if somebody comes to me and asks for a vegan soap, I make sure that I know other soapers in my local area and I can refer them to them. I used to even be willing to make a custom soap for a vegan client, but I don't do that anymore. I'll just refer them to a different soaper who has vegan soaps. So yeah, I'm not going to lose out on my business just because I don't make vegan soaps. So you're not making soap for everybody out there. You can never ever be, when you run a business, you can never ever be everybody's cup of tea. That's just not. Do not even think about it that way. Yeah, that will never work. And which brings me to my next point is you have to conduct thorough market research. Look what's going on in the market in soap making. You hear people would say in forums and in groups, you would hear people say that the market is saturated. People will freak out when they get to a farmer's market and there are 4 other soap stalls. They become paralyzed. Because I will never, and it's crying, I will never sell a single soap today because there's 4 other soap stalls. The market is not saturated. You are just not standing out. I've said it. The market is not saturated. You are just not standing out. In South Africa, today, to be successful in a business is super easy. You just have to provide a service. And you all know that. Do you want to be an exceptional business? You just need to provide an exceptional service. Get back to people immediately, respond to people immediately, send people's packages immediately, take care of people's packages immediately, and take care of how you package their products. All of that, we'll get into it. I'll do a different video around that and service delivery. So that is very important. Do your market research and decide based on where you are, who you want to serve, what's going on around you. What is the type of soap you want to make? Who is your client? Who's going to be your client? So let's say you decide you are only making soap for teenagers. Then obviously your packaging and the way your soap looks will be trendy. It will be full of colors. It will be fun to resemble the teenagers and that age group. So that's why it's really so important to know who is your market. In fact, I took the opportunity. I used my farmers markets and every market till this day. I use every single market that I go to as a testing ground to test out my audiences and to test out soaps. That's what I use my markets for, because that gives me a large scale influx of people on one day, and I can immediately see what people want, what they talk about, what they ask me. If somebody asks me, don't you have this soap? And I have many people asking me this, then I know people are looking for that. So that's a great place to go into a farmer's market to do testing. Don't go into a farmer's market with the ideas, I must make money, I must make money. Gather information about your clients so that you can better serve them in the future. Then the other thing also is you must be able to adapt to any market change. Let's take, and God forbid that we don't go through something like COVID again, but let's take COVID, for example, where many people moved to a liquid hand wash as opposed to a bar soap. So you must be able to adjust to trends. Like, just keep that in mind. You cannot, just because you have this pretty soap, and it sold great for 2 years, and now suddenly it doesn't sell anymore. You hang on to that pretty soap because it's sentimental, and there's so much sentiment in the soap, and it's like your first soap that you might, then you have to switch it up immediately. So don't be afraid to take a product off the list and add a new one and test a new one. You cannot be afraid to do that. Okay. Number 4, cost and pricing. If you start your soap making hobby or soap making endeavor, knowing that you're going to want to go into a business, track your cost and your pricing from the get-go. Now, there are different ways. Cost and pricing is probably a video on its own completely. But you have to know the cost of your product to know what you should charge for your product. The general rule of thumb is that if you have your cost product, let's say your product costs 15 Rand to produce, which includes overheads, part of electricity, like labeling, paper, all of your ingredients, every single thing. And normally in the beginning, soap makers don't add their time to their product cost. As they scale up their business, then they might start to do, because you might start to get people in and you need to pay them. So know the cost of making a single bar of soap. General rule of thumb is that you multiply that by 4. That gives you normally your retail price. Now, in South Africa, depending on the type of soap you make, that's a little bit steep. So I know, for example, for the soaps I make, which is a everyday use soap, I am not going to charge ×4 retail price. Mine's going to be less. If you make artisan soap, artist soap, designs, awesome designs, you obviously spend a lot more time on the soap. Then yes, you might charge ×4 for the soap. But never really more than that. So you have to understand, that's why when you identify your market and your niche market, who are the clients that you want to provide soap to, then the cost, identifying your retail cost and working that out will be a little bit easier. Then, of course, there are also people that wholesale. I do wholesale, and I am planning on venturing into white label next year as well. Those are also different costs, so and prices that you need to work out, but I'm not going to get into that now. But yeah, but important is know the cost of your goods sold. We talk about COGS. That means for your single bar of soap, you must know how much it costs you to produce that single bar of soap. It's not just to calculate your retail price, but it's also to see how, for me, it almost like became a puzzle and a game, is to see how can I actually bring that cost down, and how can I keep the cost the same while raw materials is going up. So it's almost like a game for me. I love that, to sort of figure that out. The 4th thing is branding and marketing. I mentioned that I've pretty much dabbled in soap making for 3 years, used it mostly for testing things out, understanding the market, understanding what's going on out there. Doesn't have to take you so long. It can take you 6 months. Just do your homework thoroughly, because I did it part-time, very much part-time. That's why I didn't really worry about how long it took me. But make sure that you build a very strong brand identity message. If you don't know what your brand identity message, get with somebody that can help you understand what your brand identity should look like, or will look like, once you've identified your market. You cannot build a business if you do not have any idea what your brand is standing for and what your brand identity message is. And that does not just mean having a logo. It means what story is your brand telling to the people out there. Then, of course, you want to look at which social media platforms you want to be on. Just one tip for today on that is, again, I hear a lot of people, even me, I demise Facebook. but your clients might be on Facebook. You might say, I will never go to TikTok, but your clients might be on TikTok. So remember, it's not you as a person going onto TikTok, it's your business that's going onto TikTok. So you need to hang out where your clients are hanging out. Otherwise, they will never get to know about you, or they will never know you. So you really have to go where the crowd is hanging out. You cannot market because you want to market a certain way. And if your clients are not there, you're marketing literally to an empty room, and sales will be crickets. I think you do realize that. One other thing I want to mention, again, could be a completely separate video, is that now it's completely out of my mind what I wanted to say now. I'll get back to it. I'll remember, I think. Okay, number 6, operations. If you know you're going to turn your soap making endeavor into a business, make sure that whatever operations you put in place, systems and things you put in place, are geared for scaling a business from the get-go. There's a lot of tools out there that are for free. You do not have to pay for a single tool out there to run a business successfully, especially during startup. And I will share some links of the tools that I'm using. But make sure that your operational process, like if you do invoicing, make sure you have an invoice system in place from the start, so that you can get into the habit of working on invoices, submitting invoices and invoicing your client, and so that you can work out all the little niggles before you actually get into mass production. You don't want to get an order for 100 soaps and then suddenly everything is all over the place. You want to have everything in place, even if you only sell 10 soaps a month. So yeah, good record keeping of your recipes from the start. Every single thing, that's a big mistake I've made in the beginning, is you think that if I make a second soap from one that I made the previous day because something didn't work out, you think you will remember, but you don't. So make good notes of every single thing. You want to make notes about the ambient temperature, colors, the time, even how long it took to try, everything, every single thing. Make good notes on every single process of making a soap bar. What you liked about it soap, what you didn't like, what you liked about the fragrance, what you didn't like, all of that. Number 7, commitment and time management. You have to be able to commit a certain time to your business every single week. You cannot run, it comes back to the mindset in the beginning, you cannot think you're going to scale a business and run it with a hobby mindset or a poverty mindset. It just, I've never ever met a person who was able to build an empire with a poverty mindset, or with a mindset of I want to stay small type of mindset. So you have to dedicate time out in the week and plan your activities out in the week. That's sometimes difficult also for people, because they now transition mostly, even if they still have a full-time job. Many people are in a job where somebody else tells them what to do. They have a job description, they go into work, they know exactly what they need to do. But now, when you run your own business, you are the one that needs to tell you what to do. There's not another person that's going to come and tell you what to do. So have a nice structure. Like if you decide, I'm going to work on my business on Saturday mornings, have a structure of, okay, I'm going to make one soap. This is just random an example, but I'm going to make one soap bar. I'm going to plan out my social media for the week. I'm going to do a video or what. So just make sure you plan your activities out and don't do things just randomly. Be consistent with what it is that you plan. The final thing, and my biggest pet peeve, number 8, learn how to formulate a recipe. I want to say most soap makers, but I might be wrong, but at least where I live, a lot of soap makers will grab a recipe out of a book, soap making book, or there's a lot of blog posts There's a lot of information and soap recipes out there on the internet, but it's a recipe the same way you would bake a cake. It will tell you so many grams of water, so many grams of caustic soda, so many grams of olive oil, so many grams of coconut oil, so many grams of mango butter, so many grams of shea butter. So it will give you, it will list out the recipe for you. 20 grams of fragrance oil, whatever it is. The problem with that is, and I see it every single day, people will come and ask and say, I don't know what's wrong with this recipe. What happened to my soap? This is what they say. I don't know what's happened to my soap. I've made this recipe 100 times and I've never gotten this. And here's the problem with just picking a recipe out of a book. There are so many variables that play a role when you make a batch of soap. Stuff like, I actually made a quick list here and I can do a video later on this, but stuff like the batches that your raw materials are harvested in can differ. The quality of the raw materials can differ from batch to batch. Temperature, humidity, the materials of your mold can influence your soap. Insulation, curing conditions can influence your soap. Is it drier out there? Is the air more moist and humid out there? But just know that every single time you make a soap, you cannot assume that that soap is going to turn out exactly the same way as the previous time. Even fragrance, especially with fragrance oils, when companies source fragrance oils, they have somebody else that mix the fragrance oils for them. So if they change their recipe, the company will just get the fragrance, like let's say they get like a berry fragrance, but the actual mixture of the formulation of that fragrance can differ. Even that can influence your final product. So learn how to formulate a recipe, because if something goes wrong, you have the understanding to know where to change the recipe, what you need to change to fix the issue that you have. You want to be empowered. You don't want to just be left to, I don't know, somebody else's devices on somebody that not made up, they obviously they formulated the recipe, put it in a book for somebody else to use. But as a business person, you want to be empowered with enough knowledge that you know how to troubleshoot if issues arise. That's one of the biggest skills that you can teach yourself from the get-go. If you get to a stumbling block, do brainstorming. We would call it risk management, but do your brainstorming and figure out what you should change based on the knowledge that you have about the formulation next time to fix the soap. So when I started off with the soap making endeavor, luckily, at that time, I did not have money to spend money on a bunch of soap supplies. And I think it was for almost like 2 to 3 months. I only watched every single YouTube video that I could find that teaches me about soap making. One of the videos that I loved to watch was Royalty, the Duchess of Soap, Katie Carson. She makes an artisan soap mostly. But she explained a lot around the soap making process. There's a lot of other soap makers, I'll leave some links below, that really explains. Ellie from Everyday Soap in Australia really explains when she is working on something, what's going on in the process. So learn about the actual formulation of soap making as much as you can. And I mean, till this day, I still learn. Just the other day, yesterday, I listened to somebody else's video and I learned something new. So you are going to learn something every single day. You're never done learning when you work with chemistry, really. So yeah, learn how to formulate a soap recipe. And if you are a new soap maker, let me know in the comments where you are in your journey. And also let me know if you have any questions and I can make some videos around the questions that you specifically have. I'll leave information about my soaps down below. Just know our website is under construction. I am in the middle of the process of rebranding and I almost want to say, what's the right word? Yeah, just rebranding and working on my brand identity for the change I want, or the direction I want to go to in 2024 with this business. So there might be not much available out there throughout December, but yeah, pop me an email or whatever, ask any questions you have in the comments. But I plan to take you on this journey so that you can learn with me and know what to look out for. I do know there's not a lot of people that really want to share their IP around things like this, but if we can help small businesses to grow and be sustainable, that would be absolutely amazing if I can share any information that I have and that I've learned to help somebody else to be successful. So I'll see you in the next video and have an amazing weekend. Bye.